Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And today we're going to be looking at Napoleon Crosses the Alps from Epic History TV. Now, Napoleon crossing the Alps, probably one of the most famous chapters in his life that was immortalized through the two paintings called Napoleon Crossing the Alps or Bonaparte Crossing the Alps, depending on which one. Napoleon Crossing the Alps is the much more propagandized epic one where Napoleon pops a sick wheelie on a horse. There's actually 5 variations of that painting, one of which I actually got the chance to see here in Vienna at the Belvedere Museum. If you're ever in Vienna, go check it out. But yeah, Napoleon Crossing the Alps. The year is 1800. It is just a few months after the Bremier coup, where Napoleon was one of the conspirators to basically overthrow the assembly and to get power in France. And France at this point is fighting Great Britain, the Ottoman Empire, the Austrian Empire, states in Italy and in Germany, and I think Russia as well, just to throw it all on top, right? And so Napoleon is now rushing through Italy to try and go get some more territory to really kick it to the Austrians, and all that territory in Italy that has been lost that he worked so hard for and was one of the campaigns that really sprang him into the role that he has now, for which he would eventually become the Emperor of the French. If you haven't already yet, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. Let's get into it.
The year is 1800, and France has a new leader, 30-year-old First Consul Napoleon Bonaparte.
30. I'm 28. What am I doing in my life?
5 months have passed since the Brumaire coup cast France's directory into the dustbin of history.
Sorry, not the assembly, the directory. My apologies.
In its aftermath, Napoleon has skillfully outmaneuvered his co-conspirators. And in a new constitution, confirmed by a massively rigged referendum, he's been confirmed as First Consul.
Now, an interesting idea is that, okay, it was massively rigged, right? Which this is one of those arguments of, was Napoleon a tyrant? The answer is, kind of. But I kind of wonder, though, like if this was an actual proper representational, election, or no, sorry, not election, vote, referendum, what would the votes have actually been? Would it have been way more in favor? Could it have reached over 50? I mean, it's a binary choice here. So could it have reached over 50%? I kind of have no idea. So if you have more info about that, write it in the comment section down below.
Alongside new consuls, Cambaceres and Lebrun.
Yes.
Napoleon wields enormous executive power and is eager to use it. First, he offers an amnesty to royalist rebels in the Vendée, helping to pacify the region and freeing up troops. Then he creates a new national bank to restore confidence and growth to France's dysfunctional economy. He strengthens the gendarmerie, the paramilitary police, and orders it to take ruthless action against bandits who infest the French countryside. And he transforms French government, personally appointing prefects to govern every French département.
And it's important to remember, too, I just want to talk about bandits briefly, that they were absolutely ravaging the countryside, right? It's actually kind of a forgotten thing of how effective these bandits were and how much wealth was really being lost to them, right? I mean, it's very difficult to really grow up this economy again while there's road banditry and all sorts of this terrible criminal behavior, right? And so stability is really the aim of the game here. You have to remember the revolution has happened now many, many years before, right, when the French Revolution broke out. And so the people of France have just had this constant instability, right? The Red Terror being probably the peak of it. And people are just really looking for this stability, right? And that's the foundation here of what Napoleon and his co-conspirators, if you will, or now his members in government, if you'd like to call them that, are looking to do. They're looking to stabilize France, right? You're not able to really fight a war if you have so much instability on the home front alone. And, well, Napoleon's going to consolidate that and bring it to Austria.
As well as sub-prefects and even the mayors of larger towns.
And sorry, just to remember too, is that when Napoleon went to Malta, he enacted wide-reaching reforms within 6 days, right? Where he banned slavery, he got rid of the feudal system. I believe he did something as well with the finance system and introduced, there was one other reform too, but that was talked about while he made basically a layover on the way to Europe, right? So Napoleon, even though he's 30 years old and yeah, he's just an artillery general, right? He already has experience with reforming governmental systems, right? He's already done that in Malta. And although those reforms wouldn't stay and they ended up being unpopular, and that's a discussion for another day, that experience is still there, right? He's already a reformer. He's also a great leader, as well, a great leader and a great soldier.
Each achievement is trumpeted by the few newspapers still allowed to print, and which are now entirely under state control. But there is no reason to doubt Napoleon's immense popularity.
Looks like a baby there.
And that his remarkable energy has begun to drag France out of chaos and torpor. However, his reputation has been forged in war. And with France facing another military crisis, he must quickly turn the situation around, or his rule could end as suddenly as it began.
I mean, let's just take a moment to look at this here, right? You're operating on two fronts, right? And you have the British as well, constantly harassing your navy. Betting odds on this, if you just had a look at this map, right, and you blurt out this name here, who would you be betting for, right? You know, and obviously you can't just look at the maps. Life is not a Hoi 4 game, but nonetheless, the odds are quite stacked here against France.
His rule could end as suddenly as it began. France is threatened on two fronts by the armies of Austria, which has 200,000 men in the field. In Germany, France's most powerful force, General Moreau's Army of the Rhine, is poised to launch a counterattack. Moreau is a skilled commander with influential friends, who had himself turned down an invitation to lead a coup against the Directory. Napoleon, warily respectful for now, offers advice, but will leave Moreau to wage his own campaign. It is in Italy that Napoleon identifies the greatest threat and the greatest opportunity.
Oh.
3 years ago, Napoleon's stunning victories had left France dominating northern Italy. But in 1799, forces of the Second Coalition, led by the great Russian general Alexander Suvorov, had won a series of crushing victories over the French.
So it's important to remember, Napoleon does have his Italian campaign, but then he is sent to Egypt, right? He's sent to Egypt, where it was thought that they could capture those critical states in there, and that they would be able to, you know, kick the Ottomans out, and also war against the local population to have control there, right? And so that objectively ends in a failure. Napoleon leaves and goes back to France, and then the Premier coup happens, right? So while this is happening, it's important to note that Napoleon is not leading these troops. He's not even in France, right? He's in Egypt at this time.
He had then been ordered to Switzerland. But before he could get there, General Massena's victory at Zurich thwarted coalition plans to unite their armies and staved off disaster for France. The unpredictable Emperor Paul, incensed by British provocations, had then withdrawn Russia from the Second Coalition. But nearly 100,000 Austrians remain in northern Italy, under the aggressive and able leadership of General Melas. French forces, on the other hand, are scattered, outnumbered, and desperately short of supplies. It's nothing new for France's army of Italy. But even the arrival of the great General Massena to take charge barely lifts morale. It is a fragile position, but secretly, Napoleon is planning a grand strategic maneuver to turn the tables on the Austrians and crush Melas's army. At Dijon, he has begun to assemble a new army of the reserve, under the nominal command of General Berthier. Veterans and conscripts alike are scraped together from depots, provinces and garrisons, until a force of 60,000 men has been gathered.
It's good to know that even in the beginning of Napoleon's career, right, obviously the Italy campaign, that was all covered. It was the forgotten army, right, those with the lowest morale that hadn't been paid, that were just barely scraping by. But it's good to know that even in the beginning here, past that Italy campaign, once he's consolidated power along with his co-conspirators, that he's still just scraping the barrel for troops, right? He gets a couple good years in there where he doesn't quite have to do that, but then near the end as well, he's absolutely scraping the barrel. So he begins scraping the barrel and ends doing the same thing.
A more cautious strategist may have chosen to reinforce Massena from the west, using established supply routes to shore up the front. But driving the enemy back on his own supply depots is likely to lead to stalemate. Instead, Napoleon plans to swing south, through the Alps mountains, and emerge behind General Melas, cutting off his supplies and his escape.
Nuts.
It is among the most daring strategic plans in history. But it will depend on secrecy and surprise, a swift and safe passage through the mountains, and for Massena to hold the line in Italy as long as he can. But while Napoleon's army is still assembling in France, Massena comes under heavy attack. On the 6th of April, General Melas launches an offensive. While General Ott makes a diversionary attack on Genoa, his main force moves to cut the coastal road at Savona, driving a wedge between General Suchet's forces and General Massena. The French launch desperate counterattacks to break the encirclement, and General Soult wins a brilliant local victory over Ott at Montefache. But the French are heavily outnumbered. After 2 weeks hard fighting, Massena is forced to withdraw into the city of Genoa, where he is besieged by land and sea. General Suchet is harried all the way back to the Var River on the French frontier.
That is an insane distance. Bloody hell, from halfway to Genoa all the way to Nice.
News of the army of Italy's defeat disturbs Napoleon.
I mean, I rode the bus there once, right, between these two places, and that took long enough, right? But I can't imagine marching that while being attacked. That's insane.
He is relying on Massena to fix Melas's attention. If Genoa falls before he arrives in Italy, he will be a sitting duck, trapped between the Austrians and the mountains. On the 6th of May, Napoleon travels to Geneva to join the Army of the Reserve and order the offensive to begin.
This is insane. I would love, just love to see the reaction on the general staff's face when Napoleon says, "We're gonna go through those mountains," just like Hannibal did. Yeah? You sure about that? Because I was going to say, I've been near those mountains, not exactly at this part. I've never been to Switzerland, but near the Austrian border. Just look at this.
The
you could barely ski through it.
Alps. 500 miles long, more than 100 miles wide. Their highest peaks more than 15,000 feet.
Beautiful, by the way.
They can be traversed by several well-known mountain passes.
Yes.
But these are narrow, winding trails, vulnerable to avalanches, with no fodder for horses and mules. It's a daunting challenge for an army of 50,000 with 40 guns and hundreds of wagons. Napoleon has decided the bulk of his forces will cross at the Great St. Bernard Pass, at an elevation of 8,100 feet. On the 15th of May, General Lannes and his advance guard begin the climb.
Would you want to be first or last? Probably last.
Even in late spring, the mountains are blanketed in deep snow.
Oh yeah.
To reduce the risk of avalanche, they march at night and early morning. A strict silence is enforced. The only noise, the howling wind and crunching snow. The barrel of each cannon weighs around half a ton.
Oh my, what, really? Half a ton? Ton's 2,000 pounds. 1,000 pounds. Sorry, I don't know what that is in kilograms. Apologies. 1,000 pounds. It's about double. Oh my, what? I didn't know it weighed that much.
General Marmont, commanding the artillery, comes up with the idea of laying them in hollowed-out tree trunks, so they can be hauled like sleds.
Clever.
Lannes' advance guard snakes up the 8-mile trail. It's 5 hours of grueling uphill marching, and at several points the men are close to mutiny.
This has got to become like some like history nerd fitness routine, right? You know, like Tough Mudder, right, and the Iron Man challenge and all that stuff. This has got to be one of them, right? The Saint Bernard passage, right? The Napoleon passage, whatever you want to call it. That would be nuts. Absolutely nuts.
But they make it.
This has got to be a thing, right? Someone's done this before. Like, this has got to be on YouTube where someone documents trying to follow the same footsteps as Napoleon's army here, right?
At 8,100 feet, they reach the summit of the pass and the St. Bernard Hospice, where food and rest has been prepared. The rest of the army completes the crossing over the next 10 days.
Just look at that.
It is a testament to General Berthier's planning that just 5 men and a single cannon are lost.
Wow.
Contrary to Napoleonic propaganda, the first consul made the crossing on a sure-footed mule, trailing the army, rather than leading it on a charger.
And so that is the painting Napoleon crossing the Alps, and the previous one is Bonaparte crossing the Alps. Yeah, Napoleon's got a little bit better ring to it. And look at that. Look at that sick wheelie, right? And if you look here, apologies, my screen has cut it off here, but I think Napoleon is etched into stone, as well as Hannibal underneath it with a broken tablet, with obviously a reference to Hannibal's famous march through the Alps. And I think that was the version that I saw in Vienna. That one there. Might be wrong though.
Lannes' advance guard presses forward into the Aosta Valley. They sweep aside small Austrian outposts, then surprise and scatter a whole battalion at Châtillon.
I'd be terrified. Like, you know, you got a bunch of nutcase Frenchmen with even crazier generals that have just, like, where do these people even come from? I'd be terrified.
But a nasty surprise awaits at Fort Bard. The fort, held by the indomitable Captain Bernkopf and 400 troops, dominates the pass with its heavy artillery. Infantry and cavalry can skirt around it by means of a goat path. but artillery and wagons will be seriously delayed until Fort Bard is taken. A first assault by French grenadiers fails, with 200 casualties. The fort remains defiant, and for Napoleon, the clock is ticking. In Italy, the French position is increasingly desperate. On the 15th of May, the garrison of Savorna surrenders. In Genoa, Massena conducts a brave and active defense, though in one sortie, General Soult is badly wounded and captured.
It's like the test image for flags. Anyways, what I wanted to point out here is that the British, man. The British are even blocking the French here in the Mediterranean. Darn Brits and their ships.
But now, starvation looms. There are already reports of cannibalism. Napoleon cannot wait for Fort Bard to fall. The army must push on without its guns and baggage, and hope to capture supplies from the Austrians. On the 23rd of May, Lannes attacks the enemy at Ivrea, taking the town and citadel. 3 days later, he defeats General Hadig near the village of Romano. The Austrians fall back on Turin. With 30,000 French troops now pouring into Lombardy, Napoleon has done it. He has completed one of the most famous marches in history. Italy is wide open, and the Austrians are scrambling to respond.
It's hard to appreciate on this two-dimensional map here how truly epic and awesome it is to have crossed through this path. Like, just look at photos of this exact path online. And like I said, I've never been there. I've been near it, right, in the Austrian side of the Alps, even though the Alps, I think, like, don't the Alps start in Vienna? Technically, it's in the North Bezirk. Anyways, this is just man. I feel like an idiot because all I can say is like, wow, that's incredible. Because I mean, what else is there to say, right? It's truly amazing, awesome feat that this was even done in the first place, right? Famous, only second to Hannibal himself. One of Napoleon's heroes. Of course. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you believe it?
Mélas quickly grasps the significance of Napoleon's maneuver. He immediately recalls Elsnitz's corps from the French frontier and sends his forces to guard the River Po crossings. He assumes the French will march to relieve Genoa.
Nope.
But despite the desperate plight of Massena and his starving garrison, Napoleon turns east, towards Milan.
Lose the battle, win the war.
General Vukasovic holds the city, but heavily outnumbered, he retreats towards Mantua. On the 2nd of June, Napoleon enters the capital of Lombardy.
Important to note here, Lombardy, I think even to this day, maybe, don't quote me on this, but Lombardy at this point is one of the most important Italian states. It is very rich, very, very rich. Lots of money to be made in Lombardy, and so this capture of the capital of Lombardy, of the richest Italian state, of a very powerful Italian state too, is very, very, very important.
But unlike the celebrations of 1796, this
They're
time,
upset.
French troops are received in cold silence. Locals have not forgotten Napoleon's brutal crackdowns of the past.
Exactly.
Regardless, in Milan his army can finally rest and requisition much-needed supplies. 3 days later, reinforcements arrive from the Army of the Rhine, General Moncey's division, which has made its own arduous alpine crossing through the Gotthard Pass.
Another fitness challenge. There you go. The de Moncey challenge.
The first consul is on the cusp of achieving his grand encirclement. Back in the mountains, Fort Bard finally surrenders. But its stubborn defense means Napoleon will be short of guns and ammunition in the days ahead. Then, on the 8th of June, disastrous news arrives. Napoleon has asked too much of Massena. For weeks, Genoa has been a scene of utter horror. Several thousand civilians have starved to death or died of disease, along with 4,000 French soldiers. General Massena, his own health broken and furious at Napoleon's failure to relieve him, negotiates an honourable surrender, which will allow his surviving troops to return to France. The fall of Genoa frees Ott and 12,000 soldiers to march north to join Melas. Napoleon is determined that the Austrians will not now slip past him and escape his trap. And so he divides his army to cover all possible routes east. For once, it is Napoleon's forces that are overextended. And it is Lannes's advance guard that will pay the price. With 7,000 men, Lannes has secured a bridgehead across the River Po, near Belgiojoso. On the 8th of June, he presses forward, intending to drive the enemy from the Stradella defile. But unknown to Lannes, he is on a collision course with General Ott's division, marching north from Genoa. He is about to stumble into a battle, outnumbered 2-1.
Oof. Glass in a hailstorm.
On the morning of the 9th of June, Lannes's advance guard fights a running battle with what it believes to be an isolated Austrian unit, driving it back towards the walled town of Casteggio. In fact, it is General Ott's advance guard. What rolling hills and tall rye fields hide from view is the rest of Ott's command, 16,000 strong, following up close behind. Around noon, the French spot Austrian infantry holding a ridge to the south. Assuming it's the enemy rearguard, Lannes orders a brigade to swing round and attack. Meanwhile, his cavalry continues to Casteggio. They scatter the enemy in their path and break into the town, only to be surprised and countercharged by a much larger Austrian cavalry force. On the heights, the French make steady progress, until 4,000 Austrian reinforcements hove into view. Soon, Lannes's men are being pulverized by artillery fire. His force is hard-pressed everywhere, and still, enemy reinforcements continue to arrive. But Ott is cautious and holds back a large reserve. The broken ground leaves him unsure of enemy strength, and he has orders not to be drawn into a major battle. At 2 p.m, Lannes receives his own reinforcements, 6,000 men of General Victor's division. Lannes wastes no time. Victor's 43rd Line renews the attack on the right. The Austrian line buckles, falling back to a small stream. The rest of Victor's men race towards Casteggio. Under a hail of cannon fire, their advance stalls. But the 6th Light Infantry is able to cross the Coppa River to the north. Around the same time, French infantry take Casa il Giardiana, splitting the Austrians in two. Fearing he will be outflanked, General Schellenberg, commanding the Austrian centre, orders a slow withdrawal. Seeing this, Lannes sends the 96th Line forward to storm Casteggio. With his men tired and darkness falling, Ott orders a retreat to Voghera.
I was not expecting that. I was expecting Lannes to be completely overrun here and possibly even encircled. Well, maybe not encircled, but would have to then do a fighting retreat. Really? Man. How? I mean, I know they just explained it, but it seems like... Shouldn't there have been... You know what I mean? Like, it seems almost unimpressive how they won that. It was just with time and a little bit more reinforcements, but I think the Austrians dropped the ball on this, is what I wanted to say.
The Battle of
But the casualties are probably very high for the French.
Montebello, as it becomes known, was a hard-fought soldiers' battle, in which French determination triumphed in the face of Austrian numbers and artillery.
Or not.
As Napoleon inspects the battlefield, he is greeted by an old friend, General Louis Desaix, who has escaped from Egypt during a temporary armistice. Just a year older than Napoleon, Desaix is another of France's brilliant young generals, who will play a crucial role in the days ahead. He is immediately given command of 2 divisions. Montebello is a glorious victory for Lannes. Napoleon will one day reward him with the title Duke of Montebello. But the larger picture is unchanged. Napoleon still desperately seeks his decisive battle, the victory that may end the war with Austria, and will surely make his position as First Consul unassailable. But Napoleon allows fear of the Austrians' escape to dominate his thinking, and once more he divides his forces, just as Melas is ordering his forces to concentrate at Alessandria for battle. Napoleon has misjudged his opponent.
Here we go.
He is headed towards a nasty surprise. A bloody battle that will cost him dear and threaten the future of the consulate. Thanks as always to the Patreon members who make this channel possible.
Thank you very much for watching this, and become a patron of Epic History TV if you have not already. That's how I'm watching this video. As you can see, it's not on YouTube or anything, but I'm going to release it after Epic History TV releases it, because that would be unfair, right? To do a reaction video to a video that's not even out yet. That's not cool. Thank you very much for watching. Part 2, very much looking forward to that. And yeah, this is great. This one actually didn't have any of the 3D animations. I kind of liked that a little more, to be honest. I like just the 2D stuff, but yeah, one of the most famous crossings of all time, possibly the most famous crossing. Napoleon does it again. But has he gotten too cocky? Is this going to be his first defeat? Tune in for the next one. Thank you again for watching. Take care. See you then.